Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PSP study course. In the last video, we reviewed Chapter 1, Planning, and we mentioned this chapter, as per the AACE International, is divided into two main sections, which are Planning Development and Planning Product. Planning Development covers planning input and data, and planning considerations and constraints. Same here, planning product covers planning output and deliverables. So our topic today will be an overview of planning development. First of all, we need to discuss the purpose of planning. The purpose of planning is to establish an acceptable course of action to perform the defined scope of work based on a review of project requirements and project responsibilities. So we plan to do the work in order to have the next course of action, the next step, next action, the next course of action. We should always have the next course of action to do the work. This is the key point here in the purpose of planning. We plan to have that vision of what we will do in the future. And what we call the next course of action is just a plan, an intention. This means it is not necessary to be exactly what will be executed or what will be implemented. And it is not necessary to be actual because it is a plan. Plan means just an intention. As we discussed in the last video, planning is conceptual. Planning is not actualization of things. Planning is always based on assumptions. Always there are assumptions in planning. Even so, we should plan to have that next course of action so we can control and measure the project performance against the project requirements. Also, we plan for the future so that we can take action today, and accordingly we can have an opportunity to do those future actions based on today's actual actions. When you plan to travel, for example, you do all the required steps before you travel, like taking a leave or vacation, choosing which places you want to visit, what the time frame for the vacation, budget as well, and so on. You should take some steps so you can travel on the date you want. Otherwise, you can't travel. You would not be able to travel. You can't travel without a vacation, without booking a ticket. This is what it means. We plan for the future so that we can take action today. And then accordingly, we can have like opportunity to do those future actions based on today's actual actions. So again, the purpose of planning is to establish an acceptable course of action to perform the defined scope of work based on a project requirements. Coming now to the purpose of scheduling. The purpose of scheduling is to develop a time-based management tool that will help implement the approved plan and guide the project to gain the desired results using the outputs of the planning process. This means a scheduling process, like any process, is developed from inputs, and the planning outputs represent the inputs to the scheduling process. So the output from planning is input to scheduling process. For example, scope of work. A defined scope of work is output from planning process and then input to scheduling process. Also, project goals, project plan, work breakdown structure, organization breakdown structure, cost breakdown structure, CBS, cost estimate. All of these are outputs from the planning process. Outputs from the planning process represent the inputs to the scheduling process. Here, let's go back to our example about the purpose of planning. When you plan to travel somewhere, you should take some steps before you travel. The steps were like taking a leave or vacation and choosing which places you want to visit, what the time frame for the vacation, and budget. So all of these will result in what we call planning outputs. We determine our budget, the destination, time frame, etc., etc., etc. And in scheduling, and this is the purpose of scheduling, We book the ticket. We determine when we will leave, when we will get back. We book the hotel, and so on. So the purpose of scheduling can be summarized as to gain the desired results using the outputs of the planning process. Now coming to the planning development. Planning development definition. Planning development would be a process of working out and extending theoretical, practical, and useful applications of the initial project ideas, concepts, or designs. And here as well, planning session, which is a meeting of the principal members of the project team for the purpose of establishing a consistent scope basis for control by defining manageable segments that meet the specific needs of the project. So we can say planning development is a process of extending and discussing all the options available using the useful applications of the initial project ideas and concepts in order to get a clear vision of an acceptable course of action. And this in order to perform the defined scope of work based on the project requirements and the project responsibilities. A clear vision of an acceptable course of action means a plan, and this would be done by defining manageable segments that meet the specific needs of the project. Coming now to planning development overview. Here we have like some key points about planning development. The first point is project planning begins early. Planning starts when the need for the project or the need for the service is defined. Here we can say planning begins with understanding the business case. From this initial effort, project planning begins or starts because, as we mentioned, we should always have that next course of action to do the work. When the need for the project or the need for the service is defined, we need to have the next course of action to get this done. And this will be done by translating the project needs and classifying them into project requirements. Then requirements become like deliverables. Deliverables lead to objectives. And then project objectives are integrated to obtain project goals. So to summarize this, planning starts when the need for the project or the need for the service is defined. The second point is planning development may be undertaken by outside experts. So it is not necessary to be an internal effort. Here we can say especially at that time of the initial effort during the defining of needs and the initial requirements. Sometimes the organization or the company hire outside experts to do this effort. The third point here, the planning development teams are those who have developed expertise in planning. Same the second point. The planning development team should have expertise in planning, and that is why it is sometimes undertaken by outside experts. And as we clarified in the previous videos, planning concepts, planning is conceptual, planning is dynamic, planning is both cyclical and iterative. And here also, just to review these points, planning development consists of planning input and data, and planning considerations and constraints. At last, we have today's discussion. In each project, there is a project plan. So the question is, considering the above, generally, what are the other synonym terms of the project plan? As usual, you may answer this question in the comments box. Thank you so much.